Today you will learn how to build an app that allows you to change the font color of any text that will be typed into the app. The first thing that you want to do is open your web browser, enter google.com into the address bar, and into the search bar enter MIT App Inventor 2. Click on the first link. You will need a Gmail account to log in. So log into your Google account or your school's Google account. We are now at the MIT App Inventor. This is a tool that allows you to build your very own apps. To start building your app, click on Start New Project on the top left side of the home page. A pop-up window will appear asking you to name your project. Let's call this project TextColors. After you realize how much fun this is, you might decide to build more apps. So using a name that helps you remember what a program does will make it easier to search for it later on. Click Enter. And we are now in the design window. This is where we set up the different components of our app. We do this by using the palette on the left side of the screen. This palette section is important because it contains all the different objects or all the different components that we're going to use in our app, such as images, labels, text boxes, and even animations. These options under User Interface allow your user to interact with the app. And you set these different components by clicking and dragging into the screen preview. Click and drag into the screen preview. Okay, let's start. Because our app will need a button, we are going to click and drag the button option. There it is, right under User Interface. So click and drag the button option into the screen preview. This button interface, or this component, will now give the user something to click on. And in our case, we want the color of the text to change when the user clicks on this button. Okay, let's now shift over to the right side of the screen under Components. Look at this panel. Button 1 should be nested right under here. This is where all the different components you have selected from the palette over here that you've selected to put on the screen preview, they will be displayed right under Components. In this section, you can rename your components or you can delete them if they're no longer needed. Okay, so with button 1 highlighted, let's go ahead and rename this button. We're going to call this button Color Button. Always select a name that'll help you remember what the component does. Click OK. Okay, because we want our user to type into the app, we're going to need a component for that. So let's go over to User Interface. Can you guess which component we're going to select? It's going to be text box. This component will allow the user to type into the app. So I'm going to click and drag into my screen viewer. Now, when you look over to the Components panel, you're going to notice that text box 1 is nested right under Color Button because we've added it into our screen preview. With text box 1 highlighted, let's scroll down and rename this component. Let's call it Name Box. We're going to call it Name Box because, and then we're going to enter OK, because we want our user to enter their name into the app. I wonder what we can do to prompt the user to type in their name. Let's look at the Properties panel right here on the far right side of the design window. This is where we change the settings of our different components. Let's start with this text box right here that we called Name Box and make sure it's highlighted. we're going to go back to Properties, scroll down, and find Hint. And in here, we are going to type in the words, enter name here. This will prompt the user to type in their name into the text box. Enter. So these 3 different words will appear next to the text box on the screen. Okay, let's now work with the properties of this component or this button. Click on Color button in the Components panel, and we're going to go back to Properties and find Text. Here it is. Let's click Highlight and type in the words Change Color. We are using the words Change Color for this specific button because that is the button that the user will click on in order for the text or their name to change color. Let's click Enter and scroll up. And notice how it changed in the screen to change color. Now that we have selected our different components and adjusted them in Properties, it's time to tell the app what to do. It's time now to start programming. And to do that, we need to leave this design window and we're going to go into a different window. We're going to do this by clicking on Blocks here on the right side of the screen. This is the Blocks editor, and it is our second work area. The Blocks screen allows you to control how users can interact with the components that we selected over here in the designer mode. So in the second window, we can do a little work to specify what our different components should do. On the left side of the screen is the Blocks panel. These blocks over here are built-in blocks that are always available for you to use. Below the built-in blocks over here are the blocks that go with our app, so the components that we selected earlier. So the designer mode is for choosing these components, and in blocks we tell these components exactly what to do. So let's start with the color button. Let's click on the color button to bring up the menu of blocks that are available. Select the one that starts with When Color Button Click. It's right here, the first one. Let's select it and drag it over here to the screen. And the reason why we chose this block versus the other blocks over here is because when the user clicks on the button, we want it to do something. We still need a block for this component to tell it what to do. So let's click on this component and bring up the menu of different blocks. Let's scroll down and locate the one that starts with Set Name Box to Text Color. Here it is. Let's click on it and drag it over to the middle of the screen. This specific block allows us to choose what happens to the text box we created when the user clicks on the button. But what do we want to happen again? Oh, we want the color of the text to change, or the color of the user's name to change. So let's go over to the left side of the screen, look at the blocks panel, and find the section called Colors within the built-in blocks. It's right here in gray. Click on Colors to bring up the various blocks. Select whichever color block you want and drag it over to the middle of the screen. I'm going to choose red. It's now time for the super fun part, clicking different blocks together. But we need to make sure the different blocks fit together in a logical order. so that when the user types into the text box and clicks on the color button, the text or the user's name will change to the color that we selected. And in this case, it's red. Okay, so let's start clicking different blocks together. Click and drag the Set Name Box block into the slot within Win Color button block. Now, let's click and drag the color block into the slot right over here. So now, after the user types in his name, when he clicks on the color button, the text will change color to red. And this completes our app. You can now use your Android device to test your app.